probably is an anxiety epidemic. It's a real thing. We put a lot of pressure on our teenagers. Plus, they have constant,
Example of how this particular group or this community has actually helped schools
I wasn't meeting the needs of those students, but where they're at.
learn from each other. But I think it's absolutely wonderful how you.
The biggest thing that sets us apart from some of the other models is something I call.
So, hello and welcome everyone. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about how to support students with learning difficulties, and we're talking about inclusivity today. Uh, what does it take to not just accommodate, but to truly build a school from the ground up, which is designed to celebrate neurodiversity? So today we are joined by Megan Hamilton-Rabbitt, the founder of Inclusive School Groups and also the head of school of a micro-Catholic school in the Bay Area. Megan, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
We know that your work extends beyond your own school walls, right? And in 2019, you founded the Inclusive Schools Group, which is a consortium of over 30 Bay Area schools. This is all about building a movement. I would love to know how your journey has been. And I would love to know what was your driving force towards building this community?
My driving force really stems personally. I have a son who's neurodivergent, and when he was young and born, he had some delays, and it just continued. And so, from a very small, he was very small. I knew as an educator, we've got to figure out what's going on, and we were very active parents, and working to make sure he had all the therapies he needed and everything. But it wasn't an easy journey in the Bay Area, and you would think that out here in the Bay Area with all of our resources that it would be, but it really truly is indicative of all areas. It doesn't matter if you're in the Midwest, East Coast, it can be a challenge and a struggle to find the right supports for your neurodivergent child. And so that's really what stems it. I worked in a small private school, and I learned a lot about how to work with neurodivergent students. Because by the time he was in first grade, they asked me to be the admissions director. And I thought, oh, that's really off my path. I'm not sure about that. But it really opened up a huge window for me, or door, into, I went back to get my master's in special education, just a lot of exciting things so I could support learners like my son. And it's been an amazing career so far. I won't underestimate what I've done before that, because I was an educator in general ed Catholic classrooms and things. I had worked in 3 archdioceses. I'd worked in public school in just different variety of ways, but something is very special when you can reach all types of learners, or at least learn strategies to do so.
Absolutely. And I think it's wonderful that you've taken your experience and actually built a community where people can learn from you, and not just learn from you, but learn from each other. Right. I think it's absolutely wonderful how you've been able to do that. And uh, I would love to know what is like the single most common challenge that all of these schools that you've been working with are facing when it comes to better serving students with differences, with learning differences, particularly.
Well, it's a couple of things, but I would say resources can be a challenge, whether it's a small little micro school trying to get the resources they need to support these learners, and if it's not that, they're already in a well-funded endowed school with a large endowment, it could be resources for the students out in the community. Sometimes it's a challenge to find the right physical therapist. Sometimes it's a challenge to find the right speech therapist or psychologist. And, there's a lot of barriers that have been put up for families and parents trying to find these resources. So that's one thing. And I want to say another one might just be a cultural stigma. So we have more and more students being diagnosed with different learning disabilities. And I actually like to call them differences. So if I kind of shift into that, you know what I mean. I think every student learns in a unique way. So that's why I embrace that. But again, sometimes with cultural barriers, parents are a little reluctant to get their student tested or evaluated, and with a neuropsychological evaluation, that just brings a lot of fear to them. Meanwhile, educators on my side and doctors and people on this side of things would say, oh no, that you're really going to help your student in the long run. So kind of breaking that down for them to understand that it's worthwhile, and it may feel really scary, but it's worth doing that for your student or your child.
Right. And I would love to know, I think, if you can give us an anecdote or any example of how this particular group or this community has actually helped schools uh, to achieve the goal that they have actually joined this group for.
Sure. So we started as a consortium of just schools. As I was an admissions director, I noticed that when students would come in the school that I wasn't meeting the needs of those students, but oh, I don't know where to send them. What should I do? I knew a few in the Bay Area, but I thought, oh, I need to learn as many as I possibly can. And to find out, I'd call the admissions directors or the heads of schools, and they'd say the same thing. And so we became partners instead of trying to like take our students from each other. It wasn't like that. It was more like, this school isn't meeting your students' needs. Can I help you by, passing your name along to this family? And it became a consortium of, we're all in it together ultimately to help these neurodivergent students. And not only were we able to help each other out with finding, pushing the kids to these, the different schools and helping one another, it became a sounding board. So we still do it now. We'll have the school leaders come to our sites. They get to tour our schools. We have our meetings. We have visits here in our actual physical spaces. But we also do things online for the convenience of so more people can come. And we were just schools for a long time. And then in the last about year and a half, we decided to open it up to support providers too. So now we're really, really growing because not only do you have the schools, but there's that other arm where, okay, we have the schools, but for example, a student might have autism and we found a school for them, but
Yeah.
they still need to have speech therapy and the parents are struggling to find the right speech therapist. So opening it up to the support providers has really launched us in another direction. I think it's going to be amazing. And I can imagine in the next 5 years, it'll be a lot even bigger.
Yeah, I have no doubt, Megan. I think it's absolutely wonderful to know how committed everyone is in this consortium. I think just to understand that everyone's focus is still to bridge those differences, bridge those learning differences, and also to bring about some sort of impact into these children's lives, right? Forget about just the children, right? It's also the families that you're impacting in one form or the other, especially with the kind of support that you're providing in every aspect of the child's life, right?
Yeah.
And how has the response from parents been? Has that been an area that you've also worked with?
Yes. So individually responding to, they'll put an inquiry in, my student has X, Y, and Z. I don't know what to do. So I will pick up the phone and call them personally, or another board member will. So we reach out personally to provide some tips. And we say, okay, well, this is not like be all end all. You know that this is just what we have in our group. There might be even more, but we're there. Even if there's another support provider that's not part of our group, if they contact someone that we send them in that direction, they might say, oh, I know. And so it becomes like a web or a wheel, they'll eventually hopefully get to where they need to be. So it's helping in that regard. And we've had families come back and donate to the nonprofit and say, thank you. My son got a tutor that actually turned his entire, this is an anecdote, turned his entire trajectory around. The student was failing in his high school classes. He just needed that social emotional / tutor, that support. And we had an educator or an ed therapist that I knew was dynamite. And so suggested that, and it changes that particular student's trajectory. So we've had a lot of anecdotes like that. So it's worthwhile.
Yeah. That's wonderful to know, right? Especially when you can see the impact happening right offhand. I think it's absolutely wonderful to even gauge the kind of impact that you're making, right? Like what you might have thought of when you had started off to where it has grown and how it is touching lives. I think you've done a wonderful job. I don't know if you're telling yourself that, right?
Well, it's exciting to think that we are going to do a post-secondary fair and we're hosting it in one of our sites here in the Bay Area. And we have some schools coming from the East Coast. I was really surprised. I didn't realize that, the impact could be where now if you have these admissions fairs, particularly the in-person ones and even the online ones, because then anybody can come. So we have some new schools joining from Southern California. So it's growing that in that regard as well.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And just wanted to add, actually, this acts as a lovely segue into what I wanted to ask you about what your current role is also like. You're also the head of a head of school of a micro Catholic school. So we'd love to understand a little more about what is a micro Catholic school and why did you feel the need to be at the helm of a Catholic micro school?
Well, first, faith is really important to me, and I've worked in Catholic schools since I was about 21, 22 when I graduated from Indiana University. And I've worked in 3 archdioceses. It's part of my life. It's my faith. So that's grounding for me. Um, and and the majority of my teaching career has been in as a Catholic educator. And so as I've gone through this journey, and then I had my own son, and then looking back all the students I had taught, I thought, oh, I'd really like to see something, kind of not change, how about evolve, where there's going to be a school that could support some of our neurodivergent learners that maybe in the past they hadn't been able to do. So when it became an opportunity, I just was thrilled. And I had finished up my administrative credential. It just was timing. Everything was timing. And with the experience I have in special education, it just seemed to work out. And the Department of Catholic Schools was excited to kind of launch this, and it kind of worked out. And here we are, and we're into our second year. And I think the biggest thing that sets us apart from some of the other models is something I call, and you can look it up on the web. This is a real thing. It's called Walk to Read, Walk to Math, and basically it's leveling the students where they're at. So their education is a lot more personalized and individualized. So micro Catholic school means it's smaller, it's intentional, and if you have a student teacher ratio that is doable for the teacher to be able to accommodate and kind of modify the curriculum the way it needs to be and personalized for each student, then it's doable. So we currently have in our particular school 4-to-1, which is really incredible. And the students, their needs are being met and they're just happy. And that's another piece. Social emotional learning, incorporating that throughout the day is a huge piece, because if they feel good about themselves, and a lot of them come from trauma, coming from other schools, and they come and they transfer in, it takes some time, but having that built-in SEL component is key, as well as our foundation of being a Catholic school. Of course, that's number one for us here, but coupled with the SEL curriculum, I think that it's a really special model, and I'm happy to be a part of it and kind of see where it goes, because we're just into our second year. So hopefully in 5 years, I can look back and have a lot more to share. But micro Catholic schools are awesome regardless. This is a thing across the country. The more personalized, the smaller it is, you can know your students better. So.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that intentionality around why we need to keep a micro school, or at least why it needs to be micro, really helps in personalization, especially in the classroom, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. And the walk to read and walk to math, we have students who are twice exceptional, for example. And so if they're 2, 3 grade levels ahead in math, they will be able to walk out of the classroom and go to the level they need to be. And same goes if a student needs remediation, if they're 1 grade level below or 2, they can walk out of the classroom and they can go to where they need to be leveled. And then they go back to their homeroom for, to be with their age level peers for appropriate coursework and, for all their special classes. And there's no stigma. It's beautiful. In some of our just traditional public schools, independent private schools, Catholic schools, all types of schools, right? It's very it seems daunting and I put myself there as a student myself as a little girl. I can't imagine walking out of the classroom and leaving my peers. Whew. But we have taken that stigma out, and it's a norm here in our building. So all of our students, K-8, go out to recess together. It's multi-age playing. It becomes the culture, and it's really cool to watch.
Right. How did you manage to bring about that sort of, I would say, environment for these kids and for your school and for the staff also? Because it takes a lot of unlearning to destigmatize anything that has been literally inbred in them, right? Like you're continuously talking about the same thing over and over again, and suddenly you're in a space where you can just walk out, where you've been actually told not to, right? So how did you bring that about, or at least what were the kind of systems that you had to set up for this to really work?
So we started with even just calling our classrooms that are multi-age. So if we have a K1, we've got a 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's multi-age classroom, you can give it a color name. So that's the yellow room, that's the green room, that's the purple room. So the students are moving to color rooms and they're not moving to grade levels or classrooms. And that helps tremendously. So changing that culture from the very beginning and instituting that, it really helped a lot.
That's a wonderful idea as well. I don't know if someone can take it for their schools as well, where you can pick up, instead of grading the classrooms, or at least putting numbers, make colors, or you can use different maybe shapes, things like that, which can maybe destigmatize the entire idea of, okay, this is the level that I need to be at, or at least it becomes a norm of openness, right? Like there's a norm of openness and safety in a space like this. It's absolutely beautiful how you've been even able to set that up, because I know for a fact how hard it is, right? I've worked in schools as a psychologist and as an educator as well, and I can completely understand how difficult it could have been, right? So when you say that children come from the trauma of being in different schools and having been labeled or maybe separated from the crowd, how that might feel, right? So it's absolutely wonderful. I hope someone, or at least anyone who listens, can take this back at least for one grade of theirs. So yeah,
Uh, it is pretty cool. There's times when you can see when they first make the movement, they might be like walking slowly down the hall, a little unsure, but then soon it just becomes their norm and then they forgot. And it's just beautiful to watch. So
absolutely. And I think, Megan, your journey has been so inspirational. And for any leader who actually wants to make their community more welcoming and effective for all learners, I think they've got a lot to learn from you, especially with the insights that you have. And what would you say is the biggest hope, or at least your biggest hope, for any of the graduates that you work with?
think my biggest like hope for them will be to first always be grounded in their faith. That's number one for me always. And to give back and serve, right? That's always important for me. But then also after having been educated in this special environment or any of these environments that I'm talking about, to learn their compensatory strategies and use them. Um, and feel confident as an adult and grow into that um, to take them, learn advocacy, learn all those things that we're trying to embed in them on a regular basis and learn, and then go out into the real world and be able to do that as an adult ultimately, and or even to the next level, whether it be secondary or, post-secondary and beyond, really. So that's our hope for them.
Absolutely. And what would be a suggestion, or at least an advice, that you would want to give any other school leader or anyone working in the education system in terms of how they can support students with learning difficulties or differences?
I think the advice I would give is always listen to the parents and listen to the student, take their story in because each one is really unique, right? And they all they come with different learning differences. And so an educator or even another leader thinks that this is how you're supposed to, it's like textbook, this is how you deal with ADHD. Well, it might not be the case because we might not know the trauma that they are dealing with outside of the school situation. So to listen and learn and then look at the whole picture and try to figure out a way to then best meet their needs.
Right. Yeah, I think that sounds like sound advice. And what is your next big thing that you will be working on, Megan?
We're excited. I have a business partner, and we are going to be launching St. Margaret's Academy, a freshman class. It's all volunteer. Everything I do for the most part is volunteer work. So um, we saw this need in the Bay Area for another school that could support high schoolers that need something a little, unique for them. They could be neurodivergent student, they could be an athlete, they could be whatever it is, but they might need to have where their coursework's in the morning and then they have work study in the afternoon where they can apprentice or get an internship somewhere and get real world experience. And I think our neurodivergent learners will really benefit from this because we see more and more they may or may not be able to, or it's just not the right fit for them to go to a 4-year college. And maybe even 2-year college is going to be a challenge. But if they have like grounded experience in something, they can end up getting jobs and being super successful. So we're trying to think outside the box a little bit and what the offerings are here in our current area. So hopefully this will be something that will be helpful for families and for students and teenagers. But I do hope also that the idea of St. Margaret's Academy is faith-based. So families that want to have that also, they will be appreciative of that and would like to be a part of the community.
Right.
We're going to start with a freshman class and then grow because it takes a lot to do a high school.
Yeah, we understand that for sure. Right. So thank you so much, Megan, for your deep insights and for the lovely and wonderful work that you've been doing over the past many years, right? As whether as a head of school or as a volunteer or even as a founder, I think what you're trying to do is actually build impact, which is commendable, right? And you're building or at least bringing people together to really uh, look at what impact looks like for neurodivergent learners and uh, the entire inclusive setup, right, for students and for schools. So it's absolutely wonderful. So before we leave, I actually have one question for you. And this question is, so this is a tradition that we usually follow, where the leader who has been on the podcast before you would give a question or pose a question to the next leader, right? So this particular question is from another leader who was with me in the previous podcast. So here's the question for you. Is there any anxiety epidemic? How do we help our middle and high school kids handle anxiety when there is a counselor shortage?
That's a really good questions. And I think there probably is an anxiety epidemic. It's a real thing. We put a lot of pressure on our teenagers. Plus, they have constant like social media and there's constant access to the web. So they see a lot more than maybe there was generations before. And it does create anxiety. I think schools should make it a priority and prioritize social emotional learning into their curriculum and to help mitigate some of this anxiety. And that's how I would take it, like as a school leader, to never underestimate the importance of SEL in your school systems or in your school.
Right. And what would you say is, or at least what do you think can help when there is a counselor shortage, right? Sometimes students need immediate action. How do you think uh, a teacher or maybe any adult can help these students handle or at least manage their anxiety?
I think what would be helpful would be if part of the teacher training should be across your whole school to have the social emotional learning curriculum. So it's a school wide based program versus just having one individual in your building that takes care of it. Because if it's something that's a school wide focus, then the students become comfortable coming to their homeroom teachers or coming to the PE teacher and if they need help in the moment, right? Because everyone's on the same page on how to kind of work with these kids.
Right. Absolutely. And thank you so, so much, Megan. I think this is going to be extremely helpful and answers the question really, really well. So we're going to wrap up and please do reach out to Megan if you have any questions about the work that Megan does, and even as a founder, as the Inclusive Schools Group, if you'd like to join them, please reach out to Megan. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful initiative and a nonprofit that is really working for impact. So thanks once again. And thanks, Megan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chelsea, for having me today. I really enjoyed getting to know you. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information about TomoClub, visit TomoClub or follow us on our socials. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.